I wouldn't even like to keep a girl like you as my cleaning lady, let alone love or dating." He was saying this to Jenessa, laughing in front of everyone. He was Ethan Thompson, the son of a member of the university's Board of Regents. Jenessa was his classmate and the top student. She had a deep, dusky complexion, but she was incredibly attractive. Ethan had trapped her in a web of fake love just so she wouldn't top the finals. And that is exactly what happened. Ethan's best friend topped instead of Jenessa, and then, in front of a crowded room, Ethan humiliated her. But from that day on, Jenessa left the university forever. Ethan was shocked that she was ruining such a brilliant future over a mere joke, but he had no idea that while weaving a web for someone else, he had become a prisoner of Jenessa's charm himself. But before reaching that day, the story of Jenessa's life was something else. "Jenessa, honey, your dad is waiting in the old Ford outside. Hurry up, you're going to be late for college," Jenessa's mother called out from the kitchen. Jenessa took one look at herself in the mirror, adjusted her jeans and jacket, tied her hair in a ponytail, grabbed her bag, and walked out. "Coming, Mom. I'm leaving now. Take care of yourself. Bye." She hugged her mother, and her mother kissed her forehead as if gathering 1,000 daily prayers into that one touch. Jenessa was the daughter of an Uber driver. Their house was small and simple, but their dreams were massive. She was extraordinarily intelligent in her studies, and there was such an allure in her dusky complexion that anyone who saw her was forced to stop and look. 5 minutes later, Ethan got ready and reached the dining hall of his mansion, where everyone was waiting for him. "The prince has finally graced us with his presence. You're very late, Mr. Ethan," his grandfather, Mr. Thompson Sr., said jokingly while setting down his newspaper. Ethan smiled and greeted him, placing a hand on his grandfather's shoulder. "What can I do, Grandpa? This sleep just never seems to end. And on top of that, Mom doesn't let us sleep in peace," Ethan said, glancing mischievously at his mother Eleanor, who glared at him with a fake frown. Jenessa got out of her father's old car and, just as she headed toward the college gate, she turned around at the sound of girls whispering. On the other side of the road, a gleaming black Porsche had pulled up, and Ethan Thompson, the heir to Thompson Industries, stepped out with his usual attitude. Seeing his personality, the girls there seemed to swoon over him. Jenessa cast a cold glance at him and walked silently toward her classroom as if she had nothing to do with any of it. Ethan also cast an arrogant look around, but his eyes suddenly landed on Jenessa. A simple t-shirt, thick books in her hand, and that strange self-confidence on her face. She was completely different from all the other girls there. "Who is she?" Ethan asked his friend Jordan with curiosity. "Oh, her? That's Jenessa, the topper of our department." "Oh, so she's the one who's been topping every semester for the last 3 years. "Exactly, Ethan. That's why I suggested you transfer here. That girl has way too much attitude," Jordan said, pointing toward Jenessa, prompting a mocking smile to appear on Ethan's lips. "That much attitude in such an ordinary girl? She looks like a total library girl. Where would her pride even come from?" "Oh no, man, she's not as simple as she looks," Jordan provoked him further, and a spark of challenge lit up in Ethan's eyes. He had found a new target. Looking at Jenessa's back, he whispered under his breath, "Try clashing with me, Miss Jenessa. Then I'll acknowledge your attitude." The two of them were walking toward the classroom in the corridor when, suddenly, turning a corner, Jenessa collided with Ethan. "Are you blind? Can't you see where you're going?" Jenessa snapped at Ethan while picking up her books that had fallen on the floor. Ethan replied with a charming smile, "I am so sorry, miss. I truly didn't see you." Hearing that buttery tone of Ethan's made Jenessa furious. She stood up with lightning speed and delivered a sharp slap across Ethan's face. "I hope after this slap, you'll always be able to see if someone is walking in front of you or not." The breath hitched in the throats of all the students present. The girls covered their mouths in shock, and the boys stood frozen like statues. Jenessa had quickly left the scene while Ethan stood there, hand on his cheek, watching her walk away. "This slap is going to cost you dearly, Jenessa. You have no idea who you've messed with." There was a strange silence in the classroom. Everyone was in their seats. When Ethan entered the class, all eyes were on him, but with an arrogant smile, he walked past Jenessa and sat in the back row. A little later, when the professor entered the class, everyone fell silent. "Take your seats, everyone," the professor said, opening his file and adjusting his glasses. "As you all know, the midterm results are out." A stir began in the class. Ethan was spinning his pen carelessly as if he didn't have a worry in the world. The professor's voice echoed again. Once again, the student with the highest marks in the class is Miss Jenessa. Applause broke out across the hall. Jenessa sat calmly in her place. There was a slight triumphant smile on her face, but her eyes held that same old confidence. Ethan's pen stopped. His gaze was fixed on the back of Jenessa's neck. The professor added, "Jenessa, keep it up. You are the pride of this university." There was a mask-like smile on Ethan's face, but his eyes were burning. "The game isn't over yet, Miss Jenessa. The real game has just begun," he whispered to himself. When class ended and everyone had left, Ethan approached Jenessa's desk. Extending his hand, he said, "Many congratulations, Jenessa. I heard you always top, and this time you proved it again." "Yes, absolutely. Thank you." Jenessa ignored his extended hand and looked him straight in the eyes as she replied. Her very self-respect was fueling the arrogance hidden inside Ethan. "By the way, you slapped me yesterday morning. I wanted to take revenge, but you are such an amazing personality that I don't even feel like it," Ethan said in a meaningful tone before leaving, while Jenessa simply closed her file with annoyance. The next few days were surprisingly peaceful. Jenessa noticed that instead of bothering her, Ethan was now helping her with small tasks. There were no taunts, no blocking her path. This changed behavior of his was bothering her. One day she was sitting at a corner table in the campus library making notes when someone came and sat in the chair opposite her. She looked up. It was Ethan. "If I sit here, your grades won't drop, will they?" His tone was exceptionally soft and filled with a sense of belonging. Jenessa closed her book. "My marks come from my hard work, not from someone's presence." A smile appeared on Ethan's lips. "Impressive." He actually stayed there and began to study. Silence lingered for a while, then he asked in a low voice, "Do you come by bus or in that old car every day?" Jenessa's hand stopped. "What is it to you?" Ethan shrugged. "Nothing. I was just thinking why such a brilliant girl in the class is so simple." Jenessa looked into his eyes. This time there was no mockery there. "Simplicity is not a weakness, Mr. Ethan." For a moment, Ethan truly fell silent. He began to watch her intently. Her fingers, the resolve hidden in her eyes. This was not a girl he could use just for a simple bet. Standing at a distance, Jordan was watching all of this. "What's going on? Are you playing the game, or have you become the game yourself?" Without taking his eyes off Jenessa, Ethan replied, "The game has already begun. She just doesn't know it yet." But he himself had no idea that cracks were forming in his own stony ego. Slowly, Ethan grew closer to Jenessa. He would offer to help her with every project and assignment. Jenessa would snap at him at first. "I don't need anyone." But with time, the ice in her tone began to melt. Now she didn't mind Ethan's company. Jordan and the rest of the friends were shocked by what was happening. When Jordan asked one day, Ethan just said, "Be patient." But his previous confident laugh had vanished somewhere. Time passed, final exams were near, and Ethan's closeness had become a necessity for Jenessa. Now, apart from her studies, she only thought of Ethan. Whenever she went to the library, Ethan was there. He would keep her busy talking on the phone all night, sometimes on the pretext of notes or discussing a project. He would keep her awake late and then suddenly disappear. Jenessa didn't even realize when her heart had been claimed by Ethan Thompson. Today was graduation, and the day the results were announced. There was anxiety on every student's face, but there was a different storm in Jenessa's heart. She had decided to confess her love to Ethan. They stood facing each other in the university lawn. There was a strange, triumphant glow on Ethan's face, and Jenessa's hands were trembling. Finally, she gathered her courage and said, "Ethan, you are very special to me. I love you." There was complete silence for a few moments. Then suddenly, that silence was broken by Ethan's laughter. He began to circle her mockingly. Jenessa's heart began to sink. Ethan came close to her, twirled a lock of her hair around his finger, and let it go with a jerk. Then, in a cold and contemptuous tone, he said, "I wouldn't even like to keep a girl like you as my cleaning lady, let alone love or dating." The ground slipped from beneath Jenessa's feet. Ethan's voice was now loud enough for all the surrounding students to hear. "Did you really think so? That someone as handsome as me, the son of a university board member, Ethan Thompson, would love an ordinary girl like you? Jordan and the rest of the friends standing behind him began to laugh loudly. I just wanted to break your pride. You were so proud of your studies. I made a bet with my friends that I would make you crazy for me and turn your ego into dust. Every word of Ethan's was sinking into Jenessa's heart like a poisonous dagger. Tears came to her eyes, but she didn't let her self-respect fall. Without saying a word, she turned and ran away. Behind her, Ethan stood with his friends, clapping. After that day, Jenessa never came to the university again. For the first few days, everyone thought she was angry. Then it seemed she might be sick. But after a week had passed, it was discovered that she had taken her records and left. Ethan was very happy at first that he had celebrated his victory, but he had no idea that the trap he was the hunter of had now imprisoned him. Days passed. Ethan's eyes would involuntarily search for that empty corner of the lawn where she used to sit. That library table, that first seat in class. Everything reminded him of Jenessa. He began to wait for her every day. His heart wanted to ask someone about her, but his ego stopped him. On the outside, he was still the same arrogant Ethan, but on the inside, he had become completely empty. Now he realized that he hadn't just broken a girl's heart, but had lost his own peace as well. Finally, defeated by the restlessness of his heart, Ethan decided to find Jenessa's house. After a lot of effort, he reached that small neighborhood where she lived. Those narrow streets, the small houses, this was all completely different from his luxurious lifestyle. He knocked on the door of a small cottage. An elderly lady came out. Yes, how can I help you? Ethan asked hesitantly. Does Jenessa live here? The lady looked at him sadly. Oh, the daughter of Yusuf, the Uber driver? Son, she and her parents moved far away from this city. Ethan's breath hitched. Where have they gone? No one knows, son. They suddenly emptied the house and left overnight. The door closed, and something inside Ethan shattered. He stood there frozen for a long time. For the first time, he realized what it feels like when the ground actually slips from under your feet. He barely made it to his car and rested his head on the steering wheel. Why am I thinking about her so much? Have I gone crazy? He said to himself angrily. She wasn't even a girl of my status. Just forget it. But the more he tried to convince himself, the more restless his heart became. As he started the car, he realized for the first time that something had been lost in life that no wealth or power could ever bring back. Ethan, when are you finally going to say yes to marriage? There was sharp annoyance in Eleanor's voice. I've shown you dozens of girls' profiles by now, all from the best families in New York. What is your problem? Ethan cast a tired look at his mother and silently picked up his coffee mug and turned away. Mom, I don't want to get married. Please don't force me. I want to focus on my business right now. There was a strange fatigue and weight in his voice. Eleanor came and stood in front of him. You've been handling the business for the past 3 years, Ethan. Your studies are complete. You are now the CEO of Thompson Industries. Then why the delay? Ethan took a deep breath. Mom, I don't want to get into an argument. I just don't have the intention. Saying this, he left. Eleanor looked helplessly at her father-in-law, Mr. Thompson. Dad, look at him. How long can this go on? Mr. Thompson Sr. adjusted his glasses and said in a calm tone, Eleanor, give him some time. There is something in his heart that he isn't sharing with anyone. Be patient. Time will make him understand. When will it make him understand? Eleanor's voice choked up. I've been waiting for 3 years, but he doesn't budge. She stomped out of the room. Upstairs, standing on the balcony of his bedroom, Ethan was looking at the city lights. 3 years. 3 years had passed since he had seen Jenessa, but he couldn't forget her face, nor that library table. Why did I do that to her? He would ask himself in a low voice. Whenever the thought of marriage came to him, only one name would emerge in his mind, Jenessa's. And perhaps that was why he couldn't even imagine another woman in his life. Sir, may I come in? Ethan's secretary knocked on the door. He was buried in his files. Without looking up, he said, Yes, go ahead. Sir, we have a very important meeting with GH Corporation today. Ethan looked up with a start. GH Corporation? I had no idea about this meeting. The secretary placed a file on the table. Sir, your father confirmed this meeting yesterday. He was supposed to go himself, but his call just came in saying he is taking an urgent flight to Chicago, so now you have to go there. Ethan leaned back in his chair with frustration. Dad really is something. Fine, who is this meeting with? Sir, with the director of their company. All the rest of the details are in this file. Ethan pulled the file toward him. Fine, I'll look into it. What time do we leave? Sir, in half an hour. The secretary left. Ethan gave a long sigh and opened the file. For the next few minutes, he looked at the papers seriously. The lines on his forehead deepened. GH Corporation. Well, let's see who these people are. He stood up, put on his suit jacket, adjusted his tie, and prepared himself for the meeting in a completely professional manner. All the members were sitting in the conference hall waiting. The tension in the atmosphere was clear. Suddenly, a confident and commanding voice echoed. Where exactly is this CEO of Thompson Industries? Does he have no sense of the value of time? We have many other things to do. We can't sit here all day waiting for him. That sentence hadn't even finished when the large door of the hall opened. An imposing figure entered. Ethan Thompson, dressed in a black suit, with that same old arrogance on his face. But as soon as his gaze fell on the person sitting in front of him, his feet froze. Sitting at the head of the table was none other than Jenessa. Time seemed to stop right there. A flash of surprise appeared on Jenessa's face for a moment, but the next second she was completely normal. Her tone was cold as ice. Oh, so you are the CEO of Thompson Industries? Her voice echoed through the hall. If you don't care about your own time, at least learn to respect the professional time of others. Is this any time to arrive for a meeting? Ethan was about to say something when his secretary quickly offered an explanation. Extremely sorry, ma'am. Actually, Mr. Thompson Sr. was supposed to come, but he had to go to Chicago, which is why Sir received this message late. Jenessa's eyes moved to the secretary, then settled back on Ethan. Regardless of whose mistake it was, discipline is equal for everyone, Mr. Ethan Thompson. She put a special emphasis on his name. Ethan clenched his teeth. He took a step forward. Shall we start the meeting, Miss Jenessa? She was now the CEO of GH Corporation, and she was discussing every point with full confidence. Her presentation, her style, her data, everything was perfect. But Ethan was watching her. He could feel that Jenessa wasn't looking at him even once, as if he weren't even there. This indifference was creating a strange pain inside Ethan. The meeting ended, and people began to leave. Jenessa was gathering her files when Ethan's voice came. Jenessa! Her hands stopped for a moment, then she turned calmly. Yes, what is it, Mr. Thompson? Her tone was completely formal. Ethan approached her. Can we sit somewhere and have coffee? Our projects are together now, so we should have a little chat. A bitter smile appeared on Jenessa's lips. And who told you that I have any interest in chatting with you? Her words hit the target directly. Tension appeared on Ethan's face. He said, Look, I didn't sign this project with you, but with your board of directors, so I have no need to make any personal connection with you. She turned after picking up her file. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. She left in a calm manner. Ethan stood there, another heavy blow dealt to his ego. Everyone was silent at the dining table, but Ethan's mind was elsewhere. Suddenly, he stopped eating and said, Dad, I want to handle that new GH Corporation project myself. Mr. Thompson Sr. looked at him in surprise. Do you know what you're saying? The CEO there is a very tough-minded woman, and you usually can't stand women like that. Ethan lowered his eyes and picked up his glass of water. Dad, her name is Jenessa, and I want to work on this project with her. I want you to talk to them and say that all coordination will now be with me. Eleanor said with a meaningful smile. It seems he wasn't interested in any girl. He was only interested in the girl he had lost. Now that she's back, my son is looking for a second chance. Grandpa asked seriously, Is this true, Ethan? After a long silence, Ethan said slowly, Yes, Grandpa. I did her very wrong. I want to apologize to her now and tell her that I still miss her today. Silence fell over the table. At that moment, Mr. Thompson dropped a bombshell. "Be careful, Ethan. I've heard she also has a daughter." The spoon almost fell from Ethan's hand. "What? A daughter?" Mr. Thompson nodded seriously. "Yes. When I went to their headquarters, there was a little girl there who was calling her Mommy." It felt like Ethan's ears were ringing. Mommy, daughter. Was Jenessa married? Mr. Thompson stood up and said, "We'll talk about the rest tomorrow." He left, and Ethan sat there frozen. Ethan couldn't sleep all night. Jenessa's face and that word Mommy was spinning in his mind. As soon as it was morning, he went straight to the GH Corporation office. When he entered, he saw his father sitting with Jenessa, and Jenessa looked quite angry. "Look, Mr. Thompson," she was saying in a blunt tone, "I signed this deal because I trusted your experience, not your son's." Ethan stopped at the door. Jenessa continued her point. "Therefore, either you cancel this project, or you will lead it yourself." Ethan entered. "The project won't be cancelled. You will have to work with me." There was a chill in his tone. "If you break this contract, remember that your other investors will also pull out." Jenessa stood up immediately. "Are you threatening me, Ethan?" There was anger in her eyes. Ethan replied in a flat tone, "This isn't a threat, it's business reality." "Fine." Jenessa's tone became even harsher. "I will bear the loss, but I will not work with a despicable person." Those words hit Ethan like an arrow. He was about to say something when a tiny voice came. "Mommy!" Time stopped. A little girl was standing at the door, pink dress, a teddy bear in her hand, and eyes. Exactly like Jenessa's. Ethan's heart pounded. Jenessa immediately rushed toward her and picked her up in her arms. "Lily, why are you here, baby?" The girl said innocently. "Mommy, you promised we'd get ice cream." Ethan's gaze was fixed on the girl. Jenessa held the girl to her chest and gave Ethan a look full of hatred. "The meeting is over, Mr. Thompson." She walked out carrying the girl. Ethan stood there, his heart feeling as if someone had squeezed it in their fist. After a lot of argument and legal complications, Jenessa finally agreed to continue the project with Ethan, but she had kept her conditions very strict. In the conference room, she slapped the file onto the table. "This will only be a professional deal, Ethan." Her tone was like stone. "Rule number 1, all our talk will be limited to business only. Rule number 2, no personal questions. Rule number 3, all meetings will be on time. And rule number 4, you will not interfere in my private life in any way." Silence had fallen over the room. Ethan looked at her and said in a low voice, "I accept." But his heart had never accepted this. Work began. They sat at the same table for hours every day, discussing files, but there was a distance of miles between the two. Ethan would sometimes try. "Jenessa, miss, some change in this report." "Mr. Thompson, stay on point, please." She would immediately point toward the file. If he pushed a coffee mug toward her, she would only nod her head in thanks. The more he tried to get close, the bigger the wall she would build. One day he gathered the courage to ask, "How long are we going to work like strangers like this?" Jenessa closed her laptop. "We aren't strangers. We are just business partners, and that is our reality." There was no room for negotiation in her words. Ethan realized that it is easy to break someone's trust, but almost impossible to regain it. One day, during a team meeting when the atmosphere was somewhat lighter, a colleague jokingly asked, "Miss Jenessa, what does your husband do?" Silence fell over the entire room. Jenessa replied with a calm smile, "Actually, I'm not married." "Oh, but you have a little daughter?" Jenessa's tone was filled with pride. "Yes, Lily is my daughter. I adopted her." The pen fell from Ethan's hand. The weight that had been on his heart suddenly lifted. A wave of relief appeared on his face, which Jenessa noted, but she gave no reaction and continued the meeting. Time passed, and the project began to move toward success. That previous harshness was no longer present in their attitudes toward each other. Ethan now quietly looked after her. If she stayed late at the office, he would stay there too. If she needed coffee, he would quietly order it. Jenessa understood everything, but she hadn't opened the doors to her heart yet. Then suddenly one day, a piece of news went viral in the media. An accusation of large-scale embezzlement of funds at GH Corporation, a fraud of millions of dollars in the project. A storm erupted across social media, and the most shocking thing was that Ethan Thompson's signatures were on all the documents. There was an uproar in the board meeting. Jenessa's face was red with anger. "Ethan, what is all this?" She threw the file in front of him. Ethan looked at the papers. He was shocked. "These aren't my signatures. Someone has committed forgery." "But the media has this very record." The old disappointment returned to Jenessa's eyes. "Years ago, you took revenge for a slap by ruining my graduation, and now you're ruining my company?" Jenessa's eyes were moist, but there was anger in her voice. "What have I done to you? Why do you ruin my life every time?" Hearing this felt like a blow to Ethan's heart. He took a step forward. "Jenessa, I didn't do anything this time." "You say that every time," she screamed. "You did this years ago, and you're doing it again today." Ethan's breath began to hitch. Jenessa's tears were now flowing. "Do you remember you said that I wasn't even fit to be your cleaning lady?" A death-like silence fell over the room. "Today, when you saw that the very girl you thought had no status has moved ahead of you." Her voice broke. "So you ruined her business just to pull her down." Ethan was in shock. "I never thought of pulling you down. Yes, I made a mistake. I was arrogant, but I don't want to ruin you." "Then what is all this?" She threw the file at his chest. "These fake signatures, this scandal. Did all this happen by magic?" Ethan clenched those papers in his fist. "Someone has done this to make us fight, Jenessa." She laughed bitterly. "Us? Or just me?" Ethan spoke in a broken tone for the first time. "I have never harmed you. Your company will not go under. I will destroy myself, but I won't let anything happen to you." Jenessa turned her face away. "I no longer have any faith in your promises, Ethan." These words were no less than a death sentence for him. Jenessa was shattered and had locked herself in her apartment. Ethan spent day and night checking files, emails, and security footage. He was sure that this was an inside job. He grew closer to the truth and finally found the person, a senior director in their own company who was doing all of this in league with a rival company. Ethan's anger was sky high, but this time he took the help of the law. He gathered all the evidence, talked to lawyers, and called a major press conference the next morning. The camera lights were on his face, and he stood before the microphone. "All the accusations leveled against GH Corporation are false. This was an internal conspiracy, and here is the evidence that proves the documents were forged." The evidence played on the screen: recordings, bank transfers, and confessional statements. The shouting of the media turned into silence. Within a few hours, the news across the whole world changed. GH Corporation was proven innocent. The investors who had run away came back, offering apologies. Jenessa was sitting in her office watching all of this live. Her honor had been restored, her company was saved, and all the credit went to Ethan. He quietly entered her office. "I told you, I didn't do anything this time." There was no arrogance in his tone, only a sense of truth and exhaustion. Jenessa looked at him. There was gratitude in her gaze, and an old longing too. But she said nothing, just quietly left from there. Ethan stayed standing there. He was happy that he had at least made his atonement. Jenessa was working at her desk, but her mind was elsewhere. When the door opened, she looked up and her eyes narrowed. "You?" Jordan walked in slowly. The mischief that was always on his face was gone. There was only remorse. "I've come to apologize to you, Jenessa Mendes." Jenessa pushed her chair back and said in a cold tone, "People like you don't apologize, Jordan. You just change your tactics." Jordan took a long breath. "Ethan had no fault in any of this. Whatever he did was because of me. I incited him. I forced him to make that absurd bet." Jenessa's fingers froze on the table. "And when I left the university?" There was sadness in Jordan's voice. "He was broken, Jenessa. You have no idea how he spent these last 3 years. He searched for you everywhere. He regretted it every day. He has given himself a punishment that even an enemy wouldn't give to someone." Tears came to Jenessa's eyes, but she composed herself. "Look, Jordan, I don't know any Ethan anymore. The day he broke my trust, he died for me. Jordan took another step forward. Love can make a mistake, but it wasn't unfaithful. He realized very late that he loves you, but he did realize it. Now he doesn't want to be your necessity. He wants to be your right. Silence fell over the room. Jenessa turned her gaze away. Right? When I needed him, where was he then? There was years of pain in her voice. Jordan had no answer. He was weak, but he is true. Saying this, he turned to leave. As he was leaving, he stopped. He still loves you, and maybe you do too. You're just hiding behind your ego. When the door closed, tears flowed from Jenessa's eyes. She hadn't lost, but the strong wall of her heart was now falling. Jenessa couldn't focus on her work at all. Jordan's words were coming back to her again and again. He really loves you. She closed the file in anger. Tell the secretary to cancel all my appointments for today. Her heart was extremely restless. At that moment, there was a knock at the door. May I come in? It was that same voice, the one she had wanted to remove from her mind for years. Jenessa said without looking, Come in. Ethan entered. He no longer looked as confident as before. Dark circles were clear under his eyes. There was silence for a while. Jenessa, he called out very softly. She didn't startle, just said in a flat tone, Yes, Mr. Thompson? Only business is discussed in the office. A wave of sadness appeared on Ethan's face. I've only come to talk about business, the business of that sin which I perhaps didn't commit intentionally, but the punishment for which I've been serving for the past 3 years. Jenessa set her pen down. Sin? You only made a joke, Mr. Ethan, in which a girl's life and her dreams were at stake. Ethan lowered his head. I did wrong. I was blinded by arrogance. I've come here to apologize to you, not for that slap, but for those words that wounded your soul. I always considered you less than myself, and that was my biggest mistake. Jenessa's eyelashes grew wet. An apology doesn't fix everything, Ethan. I know. His voice began to tremble. But an apology lightens the load. I haven't come here with the hope of getting you back, just to tell you that I never knowingly harmed you. I never wanted to see you fall. He turned back. If you never forgive me, I will accept it as my fate. Just know that I never intended to cause you pain. Just as he headed toward the door, Jenessa's voice came. Ethan! He stopped. His heart pounded loudly. Jenessa approached him. You didn't harm me? There was anger and pain mixed in her voice. You didn't sink my business, but you broke my heart. You murdered my trust. You had finished me from the inside, Ethan. Ethan had no answer. He was truly guilty, and his head was bowed in remorse. He silently walked out of the room, and Jenessa stood there crying. After that incident, Ethan didn't come to the office for several days. Jenessa thought at first that it was good riddance, but when a month passed and Ethan didn't show up for any meeting, she began to worry. The company's work was stalling, and she was trying to keep herself busy with work, but her heart was rebuking her again and again. Finally, one evening, she couldn't control herself and went straight to Ethan's mansion. Everyone was sitting in the living room there. Oh, Miss Jenessa, you're here? Mr. Thompson asked with surprise and joy. Ethan was sitting there on a sofa in a corner. He looked very weak and pale. As soon as his gaze fell on Jenessa, a spark appeared in his eyes. Sit down, daughter. Have some coffee, Mr. Thompson Sr. said with affection. Jenessa looked at Ethan with anger and said, I didn't come here to drink coffee. I've come to ask Mr. Ethan with whose permission he left the project unfinished. Silence fell over the room. Ethan wanted to speak, but his grandfather answered first. Daughter, Ethan was very unwell. He was unwell? Jenessa mocked. Didn't he know when signing the contract that he could get sick? What kind of illness is it that hasn't ended for a month? Tears came to Grandpa's eyes. Daughter, Ethan had a very bad car accident. Jenessa's face went white. What? Eleanor slowly explained. One night he left the office very late and the car hit a divider. He was in the ICU for several days and he strictly forbade us from telling you anything. Jenessa looked at Ethan in shock. He was sitting silently with his eyes lowered. Why? Why did you hide it? Her voice was now trembling. Ethan looked at her. Because I didn't want you to feel like I was putting on a drama to get your sympathy. Hearing this felt like a hammer blow to Jenessa's heart. And that project? It's complete, Ethan said in a low voice. I was just waiting for your signature and for your silence to break. Tears began to flow from Jenessa's eyes, but this time she didn't wipe them. She slowly approached him. You are completely crazy. There was crying in her voice. Do you have no care for your own life? Ethan said with a weak smile. One cares for life when there is a purpose in living. Hearing this, Jenessa's composure broke. She immediately turned and said in a loud voice, I want to see you in the office tomorrow morning, and if you don't come, I'll come to get you myself, understood? The care hidden in her tone was felt by everyone present. A real smile appeared on Ethan's face for the first time. Yes, ma'am. She was about to leave, but stopped at the door and said without turning back, and yes, take your medicine on time. This wasn't forgiveness, but it was certainly the end of hatred. It was the beginning that was now going to turn toward love. Within a few days, Ethan became much better and started coming to the office again. Jenessa's attitude had now changed. She was still very professional, but there was an unspoken care in her words. Did you have lunch? Don't work too late, you need rest. She would say all this in a formal manner, but Ethan knew it wasn't just a formality. The ice of hatred was slowly melting. Finally, the day arrived when the project was successfully finished. Today, the final papers were to be signed. Only the two of them were in the room. Ethan signed the file and looked at her with deep eyes. Jenessa, if possible, truly forgive me. In the last 3 years, not a single moment has passed when I haven't shed tears over my foolishness. This wasn't the arrogant Ethan. This was a person speaking with the truth of his soul. Tears filled Jenessa's eyes. It was now impossible for her to hide her emotions. If I say that I have forgiven you, then what? Then? Ethan's breath hitched. Then will you never break my trust again? Will you never pull me down again? The fear of years was reflected in her voice. Ethan immediately came to her and took her hand. I will never do that, Jenessa. I wanted to make you mine even when you had nothing, and today too I only want you. I searched for you so much, and now that I've found you, I will never let you go. Jenessa looked into his eyes. There was only truth there now. She took a long breath and said with a smile, If you truly want forgiveness, send a formal proposal to my house. Only then will I believe that you have changed. Ethan stayed still for a few moments. Then a huge smile spread across his face. A proposal? That meant she had accepted him as a part of her life. This was his victory, the victory of his love. A few weeks later, with the consent of both families, their wedding took place in a magnificent ceremony. Today, Jenessa was sitting as a bride in her bedroom, dressed in a red gown, with shyness in her eyes and a new peace in her heart. The door opened and Ethan entered. He looked at his beautiful wife for a few moments, as if he couldn't believe his good fortune. He sat near her and took her hand in his. I promise you, Jenessa, that I will never let you cry. You are not my pride, you are my life, and I will always respect you. Tears of joy trickled from Jenessa's eyes. She said in a low voice, Ethan, just never let me break again. Ethan held her hand even more firmly and kissed her forehead. Never, my love, never.